The dawn bled slowly across the plains, smearing gold along the horizon as if the sky were rising from a long, shaking breath. Through that trembling light walked Naira Skyhawk, age 20, her dark braids brushing her shoulders like memories she couldn't set down, each feather trembling with her weary steps. The wind tugged at her beaded dress, carrying pine and dust as though urging her on, though she had nowhere left to go. She wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the truth she had whispered too many times. No man had wanted her hand, no home had opened its door, and every refusal carved another ache along her ribs. "No man is willing to take me as his wife," she murmured again, her voice breaking as she neared a lonely cabin where smoke curled gently from the roof, stirring a faint, tired curiosity. Cole Maddox, age 30, stood on his porch, his weathered hat shading eyes accustomed to harsher things than sunrise. His stance was firm, carrying the strength of the land, yet something guarded beneath his silence hinted at an old ache of his own. He saw her silhouette moving through the soft haze, frail, determined, and familiar in the way loneliness sometimes walked the plains. A question rose in his chest before he could stop it. As her steps slowed near his porch, uncertainty flickering across her features, he stepped forward, drawn by a quiet instinct that made her arrival feel like the start of a story he hadn't expected. Naira's voice shook when she asked for water, though she tried to hide it behind a polite calm that slipped through her control. Cole handed her a tin cup with gentle care, noticing how her fingers trembled, exhaustion she'd tried to swallow for miles. She drank slowly, lashes lowered to shield the vulnerability in her eyes, but he saw it anyway. He offered the shade of his porch, stepping aside as if he'd been expecting her long before she came, and something warm eased open in her chest at the kindness. For a moment she wondered why this quiet, rugged man looked at her not as a burden but as a question worth understanding, a thought that unsettled her more than she admitted. Sitting on the wooden step, she clutched the cup like a fragile anchor. Cole stayed close enough for comfort, distant enough for respect, his gaze steady and soft. The ache inside her swelled until it pressed against her throat, and before she could brace herself, the words slipped free. "No man is willing to take me as his wife, not even as a companion." The confession cracked open the air between them, raw and too honest. Cole's breath stilled, his jaw tightening as if her pain struck something unspoken in him. She lowered her eyes, embarrassed, but the silence that followed felt patient, like the earth itself paused to hear what he might say next. Cole stepped a little closer, his boots quiet against the wooden boards, and Naira felt her heartbeat stutter with the uncertainty of what his reaction might be. He didn't ask who had rejected her or why. He seemed to see those answers in the sadness lingering along her shoulders. Instead, his voice dropped low, warm, and steady, like a lantern being lit against the dark. "You deserve more than what they gave you," he said, each word chosen with unexpected tenderness. "You deserve someone who sees your worth before you even speak." Naira's breath caught, stunned by the sincerity she heard beneath his quiet tone, as though he was telling a truth he had carried far too long without using. Her chest tightened in disbelief, her lashes trembling as she tried to understand why this man spoke to her as though her heart was something valuable. She wondered what kind of man could speak with such gentleness in a world that often traded softness for survival, and the curious warmth his words left behind followed her like a fragile echo. When Cole invited her into the cabin for supper, it was not spoken like an obligation or pity but like a simple extension of welcome, a gesture offered not with grand declarations but with the steady, grounding peace of a man who lived by quiet actions. Inside, the lantern light spread across the wooden walls in a trembling glow, softening the harsh lines of his rugged world. Naira sliced vegetables with slow precision, her hands steadying as the scent of simmering onions and warm bread filled the small space. Cole chopped wood outside, the rhythmic thunk echoing against the cabin like a heartbeat she found oddly soothing. When he returned, dust clinging to the edges of his shirt, she noticed how his gaze softened the moment it met hers, as though her presence eased something he never admitted he carried. She wondered, quietly, if he felt the same shift in the air that she did, a shift that felt fragile, unspoken, and beautiful in a way she didn't trust herself to believe. The evening deepened when Elsie Maddox, Cole's aunt, arrived unannounced, her footsteps light yet confident as she stepped into the doorway. Her eyes, seasoned with the wisdom of years and the softness of a woman who had seen many hearts wander through this land, immediately took in Naira's presence with an expression more curious than judgmental. She welcomed Naira with a gentle smile, as if she had been waiting for her far longer than either of them realized. Cole glanced at his aunt, unsure of her reaction, but Elsie simply patted his arm with a knowing calm that made Naira's cheeks flush with an emotion she couldn't name. There was no condemnation, no whisper of criticism, only quiet acceptance that felt like a small gift placed gently into Naira's uncertain hands. And she couldn't help but wonder why this home, unlike all the others she had approached, felt more like refuge than refuge owed. But the outside world was not so gracious. Whispers curled through the small town like smoke slipping under doors, rumors twisting into judgment faster than truth could catch up. Cole Maddox is keeping an Indian girl, someone muttered at the general store, and by sundown the words had reached ears that enjoyed stirring trouble. Deputy Rowan Creed rode out to the ranch under the guise of concern, his expression stern yet not unkind as he dismounted near the porch. He warned Cole to be cautious, not of Naira, but of people whose hearts shrank in the presence of anything unfamiliar. Cole listened, jaw tightening, his protective instinct blooming like a quiet storm behind his eyes. Naira watched from the doorway, guilt gathering in her chest like a heavy knot, convinced she had brought him nothing but trouble. And she wondered, trembling inside, why he didn't seem angry at her, only at the world that had hurt her first. That night, the cabin glowed with the soft flicker of lanternlight as Naira and Cole sat near the small table, shadows dancing across the walls like unspoken thoughts. The storm outside whispered against the windows, and the intimacy of the moment felt fragile yet comforting. Cole asked her about her dreams in a voice meant not to pry but to understand, and she told him quietly that she had only ever wanted a home that didn't push her away. Her words hovered between them, tender and trembling, as Cole admitted that he too had lived with a quiet loneliness, one he masked behind long workdays and nights spent listening to the wind. When their hands brushed while passing the lantern, each of them froze, breath catching at the unexpected warmth that surged through the small point of contact. Naira's heart fluttered at the gentle awareness blooming within her, and she wondered if this moment was the beginning of something she was afraid to believe in. The next dawn found Naira outside tending to the horses, her touch gentle and respectful, as though she understood the language of creatures better than the language of people. Cole watched her from the porch, unseen, the early light catching against her braids and the soft curve of her shoulders. Something shifted inside him, quiet but certain, as though the sight of her completing simple tasks filled a space he didn't realize had been empty. He recognized then that what he felt was not pity, nor a fleeting attachment, but something rooted deeper, something that had been forming from the moment she walked toward his porch. Yet he hesitated, knowing the world would not understand, and wondering if he had the right to ask her for anything more when she had come seeking shelter, not love. The uncertainty simmered in his chest, urging him toward a decision he knew he could no longer ignore. When Naira began gathering her small belongings to leave, believing she had burdened him enough, Cole stepped forward with urgency he rarely showed. He reached out, stopping her gently by taking her hand, the warmth of his palm sending a tremor through her heart. She looked up at him, confusion softening her features, her breath caught between fear and hope. His words came slowly, each one weighed with sincerity and trembling courage, as he asked if she would allow him the honor of courting her properly. Naira froze, disbelief widening her eyes as her world shifted beneath her feet in a way she had never prepared for. After a lifetime of doors closing in her face, this felt impossibly kind, impossibly unreal, impossibly hers. And she wondered if the universe had finally listened to the quiet ache she had carried for so long. Their marriage took place beneath the cottonwoods, sunlight filtering through the leaves like shards of gold blessing their vows. Naira wore beadwork gifted by the women of her tribe, a symbol of acceptance she once believed out of reach. Cole wore his best coat, the fabric stiff as though it, too, had waited for this moment. Deputy Rowan officiated with solemn respect, their murmured vows falling between them like soft promises. Cole's voice trembled, not with fear, but with the truth of what she had become to him. When Naira whispered her vows, tears gathered along her lashes, falling just as he called her, my wife, for the first time. And she felt, with trembling certainty, that this moment marked not the end of her suffering, but the beginning of her belonging. Their life afterward unfolded in gentle rhythms, a song written in small gestures rather than grand declarations. They cooked side by side, shoulders brushing in quiet warmth. They rode across golden fields where the wind teased her braids and his steady presence coaxed laughter she never knew she held. The creek near Maddox Ranch became their refuge, where Cole skipped stones just to hear her laugh echo between the trees. Each day stitched another tender thread between them, weaving a quiet, sacred joy. Naira often wondered how the life she once feared she'd never have now felt so wonderfully, beautifully hers. One stormy night, as thunder shivered across the sky, Cole held her near the hearth, firelight flickering like a heartbeat along the walls. The storm raged outside, but inside she felt steadier than ever, her cheek resting against his chest. She realized she no longer feared the wind, the world, or the shadows of her past. She had found the one place strong enough to hold her spirit without breaking it. Cole whispered that she was the greatest gift his life had ever given him, his words trembling with a love shaped by shared struggles rather than fleeting sweetness. Overcome with peace, Naira closed her eyes, marveling at how a journey born from rejection had led her to the deepest belonging she had ever known. And if you, dear reader, have ever felt unwanted or unseen, remember that the heart quietly guides us toward places we are meant to be cherished. Naira's journey reminds us that worth is never defined by those who fail to see it, but by the one soul who recognizes it without being told. Sometimes the home we seek arrives gently, in the form of a kindness we do not expect, asking only that we believe in our own value. And perhaps, just like her, your story is not ending at all, but only beginning, waiting for the moment courage meets tenderness on the softest edge of your life's horizon.